Hello and welcome to this first part of the series, Death, Where is Your Sting? I will be over the coming episodes exploring what the Bible has to say about death and what happens after death. Now this study has its origins in the 2020 coronavirus outbreak, when most of the world went into an overreaction and governments and the media gave the impression this was to be a major killer that would dwarf all other forms of death. On social media, the impression I got from most people was one of dread, terror and fear, and this was from both Christians and non-Christians. Now, upon reflecting on this response, I became aware that in 22 years I've never heard any preaching or teaching on what the Bible tells us about death and what happens to us after we die. It also occurred to me that this subject is as taboo within the church as without. This is despite the fact that while we should have a great hope in our mortal lives, our greatest hope comes after death, that the point behind our faith is the afterlife, that Jesus and the cross was all about what happens after death. In the world of modern Christianity, there is a knowledge of how important it is to be saved, but I wonder if too many people are at best only vaguely aware of what they are saved from and what the alternative actually is. What a person is saved from might commonly be conceived as hell, with all its horrors, which has often been portrayed by artists great and small since time began. So this taboo subject is despite the inevitability of death and the many funerals we are likely to attend, where we talk about being promoted to glory, or going to heaven, or going to be with Jesus, as though death is the doorway to something better. Death is something that society actively avoids, commonly using cocktails of drugs that only delay the inevitable. If a death is not a natural death, then there needs to be someone we can blame for the tragedy. We insulate ourselves from the inevitable deterioration that an elderly person goes through prior to death by committing their care into the hands of strangers who have no personal interest in the elderly person or knowledge of them. Now I know there are some very good carers who do genuinely care, but from my experience they're not common. Also, I'm not wanting to sound as though I am condemning any individual for how things are these days, but I do think we need to look at our attitudes towards death. Now I know that I'm generalising here, and that there are people who will know when they're ready to die. There are families who will know when it is time for their loved one to die, and in a real sense, they are the latter-day pioneers of death. Now years ago, while at work, I got a phone call from my wife telling me her dad was in hospital and was not expected to live for more than a couple of hours. Within minutes, I was at the hospital at his side with my wife. He was a godly man, inspirational in his faith, very kindly and wise, one of those people who you thought would be around for forever. But there I was, at his side in his last moments. Whilst there was a great sense of sadness, there was also a sense of it being a wonderful privilege to be at the death of a Christian, that there was something profound happening before my eyes, something that was as much a part of life as birth. Now, as a Christian, we should not have any fear of death. The Bible is clear there is only one thing we should fear, and that is God, God himself. In the Bible, Paul wrote that for him to live is Christ and to die is gain. And it is that place I believe we should try to get to. But how can we, unless we know what happens after death? Death is inextricably linked to salvation. Theologically, after a person dies, they go to one of two places, a good place or a bad place. And salvation is all about being as certain as we can that we go to the good place. And that necessarily involves passing through death. Now, for many centuries, there has been an almost universal myth that when a Christian dies, they go to heaven. I've heard countless Christians, elderly and experienced church leaders, and new Christians alike, make such a statement. However, the Bible does not say that. That particular myth, it's believed, has its origins in the pagan Greek culture, where it was a popular belief that when a person died, they would go to a better place, to the same place where the gods live. How that pagan myth became so prominent in Christianity is a mystery. But I do not see it being the work of God. As we shall see though, the Bible teaches us something as good as that, but different. We will be with God, but instead of going to heaven, God comes to us. This entire subject matter has been and still is prone to much speculation and wishful thinking. There is much that the Bible doesn't tell us, and it is in that, what it doesn't tell us, that conjecture and myths abound. Any study and investigation will necessarily stray into such places, so I want to make it clear that what I have here may well have inaccuracies, or even be completely wrong in some areas. Hence, I ask for grace and mercy, and if you disagree with anything here, then that's fine. Having said that, the subject of death is full of mystery, and so we need to get to a place where we are comfortable with mystery, that we do not feel we need to understand or explain everything, and that we are not afraid to venture into mystery. This, after all, is the place of faith. It is where we should be. It is where Jesus expects us to be. As Luke 18:8 tells us, "Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?" So that concludes the first part of this series, Death, Where is Your Sting? Thank you for watching.